Kaya, everybody, and welcome to our very first Environment Matters for 2022. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's wonderful to have you here on this very special session on food and farming, the untapped opportunity to fight climate change and biodiversity loss. And we're so excited to be partnering with Wide Open Agriculture at this event, where we will be digging deeper into the important role food production can play in tackling climate change. Now, for those of you who don't know me, probably many of you, because I'm not Maggie Ward. Unfortunately, Maggie couldn't make it today, so I'm standing in for her. My name is Vivian Glance, and I'm also working at CCWA in the area called Clean State. And I'm delighted to be your MC for this evening's event. So we have the great privilege to have Aunty Marie Taylor to welcome us here to the country. Thank you so much for being here, Aunty Marie. Please come forward.
Kaya, I'm going to be welcoming you to the most ancient Aboriginal land in the world that has been here for thousands of years. How come it's been here for thousands of years? Because the Aboriginal community cared for their land. They hunted and gathered on their land. They collected their food. They made sure that they didn't camp where the animals came to, so they could hunt and gather. And they made sure that the waterways were kept clean, and they ensured that Wallwork, Rainbow Serpent, was part of their community and honoured for what he does for my people. We are in the season of June, and it is the time of marrying the beautiful red gum tree that uses a beautiful gum and pours out. Did you know that that was our traditional medicine tree? We made medicine from it. We drank it. We could eat it. We could rub it on our skin and use it as a band-aid. And in many cases, that tree is still used today. It is also the time of corn, little possum. In the olden days, the mouse would climb up the tree with their little codgers. And as soon as they found one, they would throw it down below. It would be skinned, and the women would use the skin and cut the hair off it. And then they would make a lovely possum roast and would feed the family. The other totem for this season is Corrigin, the magpie, the beautiful black and white bird that flies around. Now, Corrigin had a brother whose name was Merilyn. They used to play together, fly together, did everything together. Until one day, they had a fight. And Merilyn pushed Corrigin into the fire, where he burned his feathers. As he stood up, he tried to shake the ash from his feathers, but it clung to his feathers. And today, wherever you go, you'll see Corrigin there with his black and white feathers. And not far away you'll see one on the black crow, but you will never see them together. Isn't it sad? They are brothers. And that's how they still act out. Let me welcome you all to the ancient land of Merilyn. Whadjuk Noongar, Whadjuk Noongar. We are wrong, Whadjuk believers. If you're kind of people on board, if you're water management, cook on board, what champion is probably real, nothing yelling, hydrogen on Cora, yelling Cora. Greetings, the Aboriginal custodian, welcome you all here to the ancient land of your country. This is the land, the oldest land in the world of the Lupine people. It is private culture land. These families and ancestors tread the grounds, leaving footprints upon the land where their spirit lingers on, surrounding us with stories as we listen, look, learn, talk, and later on we will celebrate. Noongar, Corrigin, Original Bourgeois Corrigin, Whadjuk Noongar, 1, 2. Some of you may have come from over the Great Sea, or from your lands of farm to come and settle on the land of the Whadjuk Noongar. I warmly welcome you to my country. I always like to share a little story. I've already shared a couple, but this one is about how the Noongars lived here. And right across Australia, Aboriginal people are very keen to know more about the earth, the sky, and the sun. And probably the magpies used to live as a group, but they couldn't stand up. They had to crawl around, scratching around on the ground for their food. Until one day, they sat down and they had a talk. And they said, you know what? If we used our form, our sticks, we might be able to lift the sky. Slowly they started lifting the sky, standing on the little rocks, and then on the bigger rocks, lifting the sky. Till all of a sudden, the sky split open, revealing the beauty of the first sunrise. As the darkness drifted away, they broke up and became the clouds in the sky that we see today. Every morning, early in the morning, we are woken by the most beautiful sound of Corrigin the magpie singing and waking everybody up and reminding us that we need to work together in order to do things. Sure, I love when we car. Body up, body clear, it's kind of hard to keep along. I've asked the bad spirits to leave the room, and all the spirits should come and be with us as we talk. As I hang the bunch of cameras, the message is, I don't come in anger. Let me leave this little verse from the song that we often sing. Narakan canning water, Narakan full of water. Narakan full of water, thank you all for. Yakin Narakunam, Torch, Narakan. Narakan, Murdoch. Yes, we are one, but we are many, and from all the lands on earth we come. We share a dream and sing with one song. I am, you are, we are, solid Australians. Now, whenever I go anywhere, down here on Whadjuk Noongar country, especially down here, on this side of the river, I always remind people that you've got to barrack for the donkers. Thank you.
Thank you, Aunty Marie. Thank you so much. And I'd just like to say that it is a privilege to be here on Whadjuk Noongar tonight, and I would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I acknowledge the enduring culture and connection of First Nations people to the country here in WA, and as the first agriculturalists of this land. It's a privilege to be sustained by the same country they have cared for since time immemorial. Thank you. Now, the Environment Matters series is one of CCWA's longest running forums where we bring together experts and stakeholders from government, industry, and community to discuss environmental issues and challenges in a forum where you, the members of the public, can participate and contribute to the conversation. Last year, we launched the 2030 Vision, CCWA's movement story for conservation, climate, and communities. And this is our core communication platform, designed to position CCWA within a hopeful climate and conservation narrative. Now, we aim to use storytelling to shift the conversation around the climate and environment away from paralysing politics and divisions. We all know what that's like. And we want to move towards a hopeful vision that unites and inspires community leaders. So events like this are a key aspect of this. Tonight, we'll be hearing directly from our partner organisation, Wallwork Agriculture, Australia's leading regenerative agriculture and food company, and a panel of leading industry experts, as well as a local farmer. Wallwork Agriculture, or WRA, they are Australia's leading regenerative food and agriculture company, and owner of consumer brand Dirty Clean Food, which connects regenerative farmers with conscious food eaters. And just for complete transparency, I do buy that food. And we hope you all managed to sample some of that delicious food that we had in Florida, provided by the one and only North Street store, as well as some of Dirty Clean Food's regeneratively farmed produce. Now, unfortunately, Ben Cole, who is the co-founder and managing director of Wallwork Agriculture, was planning to be here, but he's unable to join us tonight as he is unwell. We've had a number of apologies due to the COVID situation, and we hope that those unable to join us tonight are all better soon. Tonight's event has also been supported by Perth NRM. And is part of the week of events celebrating community action in WA in the lead up to the International Day for Biodiversity, which is on Sunday. If you'd like to know more about the other events happening this week, you can find them on the Perth NRM website and Facebook page. And big thanks to Perth NRM for their support. Now, I'll just give you a quick run through of tonight's proceedings. So after my introductions, you'll be hearing from Merilyn Elson from Wallwork Agriculture and Shay from Perth NRM. Then this will be followed by a presentation from Heidi, Mippy and McGuire from Lupine Project, and then Simon Wallwork from Corrigin and Chair of Ag 020. Now we will conclude with a Q&A session where you will get the chance to ask our presenters some questions. So if you have any questions during the presentation, make sure you write them down and have them ready to ask in the house. While this is happening, you will notice at the front Will Besson from Sugar Food Presentation, who's happily scribbling away, turning everything discussed here this evening into fabulous, easy to understand images. And our speakers will be hanging around for any informal questions afterwards until 8:15 UK. You'll find tea, coffee, and a foyer. Each member of the food groups on the way out in the theatre. And just a little housekeeping before we get stuck into the presentation. I wanted to let you know that the bathrooms are situated on both sides of Bush Court. That's the big room area there. And emergency exits are at the top of the stairs. And that's what I'm here to do. If there is an emergency, our assembly point is at the evacuation area 1 in the middle of the court on the lawn. Please meet us there before heading off so we can tick you off our list and make sure no one is left inside. And for the slightly less green notes, please make sure you all have your hands on the side. Thank you. So now for our presentation. I'd first like to introduce Merilyn Elson and Shay. Merilyn's background is in the fast-moving consumer foods industry, where she worked for a WA family-owned food manufacturer for over 30 years. A passionate foodie, Merilyn is excited about bringing fresh, wholesome, affordable food to the world. She believes the provenance of food is becoming more important, and there is an appetite for consumers to know more about what goes into their food, where it is grown or raised, and who benefits when they purchase it. Merilyn, would you like to come and join us at the front? And we also have Shay on the couch. Yes, let's move some of these slides forward, shall we? The slides aren't moving. Okay. Shay on the couch, who works as the senior manager of the Sustainable Agriculture Program at Perth. Having grown up in the southwest on a bee farm, her love for farming has remained strong. Having said this, she's also well aware that farming needs to be done in a sustainable way, so we can support prosperity for many decades to come. Shay works to build sustainable farming communities and appreciates that we all have a role to play in how our food is produced, and awareness is critical to this. Over to you.
Great. Okay, so this is very organised, given this is very short notice, so I apologise in advance. I've got notes, so I don't miss anything that Ben was hoping to say. But yeah, I guess my background in product development and innovation gives me a slightly different lens to Ben's background, but I've been involved in the business for a long time and really passionate about what we're doing. So yeah, happy to share that with you today.
I think I just want to have a conversation around what we do and why we do it, and hopefully have a bit more, it feels a bit more interactive to everyone. So yeah, I suppose we'll just start with that. I suppose my reason as to why I do what I do, as mentioned, I come from a farming background down in the southwest, and have always been passionate about trying to make a difference. And I think the ability to be able to work with an organisation like Perth, where we have our focuses around encouraging West Australians to create positive ecological impact, and then pairing that with the fact that they get to work in the agricultural space. Farmers obviously manage such a large proportion of our country, and I think the opportunities that they have to deliver on environmental benefits for everyone to benefit from as a public good isn't recognised enough, and I think the fact that we're able to deliver projects to be able to do that is really important. Yeah, but it's really exciting to be working with what we do. And what brings you to working with Whadjuk Noongar and your sort of why?
Right, so I'm glad you asked. I'm just going to put on so I know what to say. Right, so we're reinventing the system that's critically broken, so fairly difficult task, but we're looking at holistically at the system through our 4 returns framework. So we were the first ASX listed 4 returns company. So rather than just focusing on finance, we're also looking at natural returns, social capital and inspiration. So triple bottom line is quite common, but we're looking for that inspiration piece as well to get people on board and moving through the journey to make a real change at scale with our system. So the system's broken. Agricultural land is 40% of the Earth's mass, but responsible for 30% of global greenhouse emissions and 80% of biodiversity loss. So in WA's wheat belt, we've gone from 20,000 to 7,000 farmers in the last 3 decades, and the pressure is about more output, more chemicals, more mechanical farming systems in order to just survive. So how do we turn that around and have a different approach to farming that then leads to different quality of food, that then leads to a different outcome for consumers? So that's kind of our broad focus. So we're looking at regenerative farmers and ethical procedures on one side and conscious consumers on the other side, and how do we get a dialogue that brings those two together. Because a lot of farmers are motivated to do the right thing, but they need that information back from the market, and conscious consumers are really interested in where the food is from. So how do we get that information back to them? So it's about education, it's about examples, less transactional relationships. So we try not to treat our suppliers just as suppliers, but we want to work together to build a better system. And we want to talk to consumers and help them to understand how they can take small steps to make changes. So, because it can be a little bit overwhelming when you think, oh, I just want to change the world. But if you can change a little bit at a time and do small things, then that gives us all the confidence to get moving. So when we first started the business and started talking about our communication strategy, regenerative was a word that we were really nervous to use. Regenerative agriculture wasn't really well known, and there was a lot of politics around it, like a lot of things. But now it's getting more mainstream. It's being talked about by a lot of businesses. There's a lot of big food getting into this space. So we need to make sure that we are capturing what it is that we're doing and being very clear with our communication so that we're not greenwashing. People understand who we are, what we're doing, and how we can make a change together. Next. So in terms of making a change, food is one of the only sectors where we can have an impact on the inputs, so on the our land usage, and also on the sequestration and the outputs, and making some controls there. So this is a really important sector to actually have an impact at scale. And there's a lot of activity, as I said, in big food, but what can we do here in our market? Because there isn't a big food here, but we've got a big food bowl. Oh, there you go. So we talk a lot about the planetary diet. It doesn't really matter what you call it. There's different names, different approaches, but it's about flexitarians. It's about people looking for different ways to eat that's going to have less impact on the world at large. So when we're looking at our strategy for our product portfolio, we want to be working in areas, if we're in animal products, which we certainly are in animal protein, we want to understand that they're grass-fed, that they've got high animal welfare, and that the systems that they're part of are a regenerative network and farming plan. So, and then vegetables, how does that fit in? Whole grains, how does that fit in as a network, not looking at the individual pieces, but how to get it to work as a system. So why does NRM be involved in this area?
So I suppose a bit about what Perth NRM is. There's 56 different NRMs across the country, and there's 7 in WA, independent organisations tasked with improving land management practices in both the environmental and agricultural space, and obviously they're so highly linked. We work with industry and community at all levels of government to create meaningful activities and environmental activities that will suit future generations. I suppose, like, going on from what Mez was saying, we want to make a difference in the world for our future generations. And Perth, like, our region has like 90% of the population, and we all rely on food. We all rely on the agricultural areas around the rest of the state to supply us, but yet how we're going to influence that, I suppose, and then that feeds into a bit of what wider bag, doing in terms of connecting people to the food that they can buy and create impact that way. And what we're trying to do is try to create that awareness so people are able to make go out and make that conscious change and have a behaviour change. And so yeah, I suppose there's some of the reasons why what we do and why we do it. We're trying to also, in the agricultural space, and people might know, but agriculture isn't in the Perth region. We hear that often, and I think, well, like I've said, there's so many people here that want to create a difference. We are more conscious in our consumption habits, and we want to try and have those conversations as well as an organisation. So being an independent organisation, we have a huge range of stakeholders, and we have regenerative agriculture. We were able to raise awareness around how important that is to so many people here in WA. We did a conference back in 2019, And then are we trying to bring others along in that conversation and try and create that change? We're also doing that in some other spaces. So, maybe talk about the why you guys do what you do, I suppose, but what are you actually doing in this space?
Yes. So we have 3 pillars to our business. So firstly, we're working in, we've got the Dirty Clean Food brand. So we're looking at healthy products that we can sell into the market. We've got a vertically integrated food brand to connect these different areas. And we have some of our own products. So we work with a number of animal protein suppliers. We've got some beef and lambs, some fantastic chicken suppliers, some pork suppliers that are all following some protocols that we worked on together. And we also work with a bunch of local producers who are looking for an alternative route to market. They have similar ethical positions to us, and it's just a really nice way to work with people. I come from more of a big business background. It's so nice to work with suppliers who are in it for the same reasons as we are, and it's not just about who's making the most money and how we can get to the biggest market. So it's refreshingly different business. We're also doing a lot of work in plant-based milks. So you may have seen oat up on the way in. So we have launched a brand here using oats grown in Williams to get us started, rather than pitching in and building a facility before we knew that we could do it. We're working with a supplier in Italy, which makes no sense, especially at the moment, but that's where we are at the moment. So we have our oats, they go to Italy, they come back as oat milk, and we're establishing a market with that. We're at the point now where we are confident that we know what we're doing and the product will sell. So we are currently working to design a processing plant. So we're bringing industry back to WA, which is really different. Most of the food industry in WA has actually left. So this is great. This will be good for regional jobs, as well as just to build an industry that's not just based on picking stuff up and sending it overseas. So we think that's really important for our growers, that they can get a feel that just the product's just not disappearing into the commodity stream, and be complete price takers, that they can have some involvement in their process from the ground through, and they can be part of it as well, because that makes them really proud of what they're doing and much more interested if you can kind of see the journey. So that's really exciting. We just launched chocolate and a coffee. There's lots more to come. So that's all happening, which is very exciting. And we've also got the Lupine Project. So WA grows about 80% of the world's lupins. And again, they're all just taken into a commodity stream and mostly sold as animal feed. They're a really good source of protein. They're about 34%, 36% protein, depending on the variety. And it's got a good range of amino acids. So it's really good for human nutrition. So we've got some IP on a new process for treating it, which makes it more functional in terms of using it in different foods, but it's also more palatable, because often that's the bitterness is what puts people off lupin often. So that's also really exciting. We turned on our pilot plant last week for extracting protein from the lupin, and it looks like very agricultural at the moment. There's pipes going everywhere and there's stuff going on the floor, but that's great. So that's working, and we're also looking at what we can do with the fibre, because you get all these byproducts when you become a food manufacturer as well. So how can we use that so that we're getting the circular economy and using everything in the market? So that, again, that's really exciting. So yeah, and I'm involved in both those projects. So it's great. And also the wheat belt. I mean, we started in the wheat belt. It's got great infrastructure and it's a biodiversity hotspot, but it's been really degraded. And it's a great opportunity for us to actually have an impact at scale. This is our heartland. This is where, I mean, Ben's based in Williams. We've got farmers all through that area, and it's really important part of who we are to sort of turn things around in that area. We've had a good couple of years, despite COVID. We've had a lot of our business within food service, which died overnight when COVID hit, but online has been great for us, and also retail. So we're getting growth, and we need that growth to be able to sustain our business model and to be able to kind of make a big difference. So yeah, happy with where we are at the moment. We're about growth, not finance currently, but eventually we'll be making some money, which will be nice. So in terms of our consumers, we want to be able to create fantastic food. I mean, yeah, if you haven't been a Dirty Clean Food customer, do yourself a favour. Product's great, and we're looking at, the instinct is also that if you're regeneratively growing product and you're having better soil health, that the grain or the crop or the animal will also have better nutritional value. So we're trying to test that at the moment, but it tastes great, it looks great, it's easy to use, and yeah, it's not cheap. The true value of food is a lot higher than we probably used to pay to a large degree. So, and we're about sharing the profits fairly through the supply chain. So we're trying to keep it short, but we make sure that our farmers get a good price for their product. And I guess it's testing the model whether consumers are happy to pay for that. But yeah, we're working on that together to try and make sure that everybody's getting what they need to survive. And yeah, it's interesting to see what's happening now. There are a lot of products being marketed as regenerative agriculture. I saw a product the other day because there's a lot of work happening in America in this area as well, and someone's selling cover crop whiskey because they're using cover crops in their regenerative farming practice, and that involves rye as part of their system. And they've talked to a local whiskey distillery to make a cover crop whiskey. It's like a conversation starter. It's just getting people used to thinking about this difference that's happening in the world and how they can kind of be involved in it as well. So yeah, there's a lot more conversation with consumers. We do a lot of work in social media, telling our farmer stories and just sharing what's happening so that, again, people are interested and farmers are interested as well in telling the story because they're excited about what they're doing and how it's making changes too. So we have a natural capital program. We've got a new guy on board, Craig Pensini, who's able to focus on this. This has been something that's kind of been around the edges for a little while. We're getting much more focus. So we work on regenerative farm plans with our farmers. So they look at soil health, biodiversity, natural water cycles, and communication. And we work on plans together, and then we look for track changes over time. Some things take a long time to get changed, some things are quicker, but there's also, we use this scale to help put an extra value on the food as well. So it's something that has been working really well with the farmers in our network. We do soil carbon measurement. So we work with a company called Downfirst Technologies, which is a global company. And we've worked on a project where we look at the resilience baseline percentage score of products. So they've got some souped up system where they use satellites and they can track carbon content of soil, which is with fairly good accuracy. And we found that on one of our farms in particular, we've got a level of 88%, which apparently is awesome. Anything above 65 is great. So it's showing that there's proof that we have got good soil carbon content in our soils on a regeneratively managed farming system, which means that when we're getting the ever-growing changes in climate and in the weather changing patterns, that it makes us more resilient. So it gives our farmers an extra capacity to get through those difficult times, which is really going to be really important moving forward. So we're working on that. We're also doing some tree planting. So we've got some objectives by June 2023 to have 200 hectares planted out with biodiverse tree plantings, which is awesome as well. So we've got we're working with Muldoon rehydration program to do hilltop planting and rehydrating landscapes. So that's really a great initiative as well. Greenhouse gas emission calculators, so we're working on that. And we're also working on, as I said, the food nutrient testing, so starting to get some proof pointing there. So plenty on. And then we're also looking at natural capital accounting. So I'll hand over to more experts than I.
Not necessarily an expert on capital accounting, I'm not an expert on regen ag, but we think of our farmers as the ones who are experts, and I think that's part of our program here at the Regen WA. We try and help share the learning out that way. But through the Regen WA program that we've had over the last few years, we understand that there's a need for that story to be told for the consumers, so farmers can tell their story. But then or there's that need for that, and they can talk about how good they're managing their land. But there's not necessarily evidence-based metric behind that. And just fear of not wanting everyone to just be able to go out and greenwash what they're selling, we are investigating how our natural capital can be incorporated into our financial accounts. So we look at our natural capital as like the inherent value of the soil and how we manage the system, and it's through the resilience of our natural capital based on farming practices. So, and we've actually been able to work with Wallwork and some of their farmers participate in the project that we are doing. So, the bit of infographic I suppose that we've got today is we're looking at how farm management practices, such as whether they're shelf belt, using biological, using cell grading or rotational grading, whatever you might be doing, how that impacts on your soil, water, and biodiversity. Because you can't really manage your land or grow or produce without your natural capital being constricted. And then how that affects your farm performance, both productivity and profitability and environmental. And we all understand that farmers are business people as well, and they can, if we're able to get them some financial benefit for how they're managing their land, whether they're able to see in terms of numbers in their accounts, we can try and create change that liability evidence behind it. So that's all the work that we are doing and going out and farm and doing some of those measurements already. But I think we're going close to time, so I'll call it up there. But if you do have any questions or want more information, we do have some information on our website. But yeah, it's been great chatting with you, Miss.
You too. Thank you.
Right, and we are now going to move on to our next topic. We're going to hear from Heidi, Mippy and McGuire on the topic of bush foods, resetting the landscape for a better way forward. Heidi Mippy is a Noongar and Warringah woman with cultural ties to the southwest and upper Gascoyne regions of WA. She's a senior project officer at Noongar Land Enterprise and has worked in community development for over 25 years. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Community Management and Adult Education, a graduate certificate in business, and an executive master's in leadership, strategy and innovation. Heidi is involved in the ARC Training Centre for Healing Country at Corrigin University. And joining Heidi will be McGuire, a Noongar leader and landholder who is strongly skilled at cross-cultural mentoring and education. And it's wonderful to have Oral at CCWA's annual conference last year, and great to have him back presenting at tonight's event. Thank you. So Oral has extensive experience in traditional land and fire management practices, as well as 20 years experience running his consulting business. He's worked across government, private enterprise and the not-for-profit sector, bridging the divide between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal communities. It's great to have you both here, Heidi and Oral. Please welcome them.
Thank you.
So, hi everyone. Thank you for that introduction. Oral and I decided that tonight we were going to represent, and we both talked sort of how someone would do, but we're going to try and get some key messages out in the 10 minutes that we have together. And I probably should move these slides then as we do that. So first of all, I just want to set the context by talking a little bit about my land enterprise group, which maybe not many people are familiar with. Both Oral and I are involved with NLE from the beginning, and it's really only a couple of months now, but having absolutely aware of the work of NLE in my time in the community. So NLE is a member organisation that is made up of Noongar land holders or Noongar people who manage lands on Noongar country. and they each manage their properties independently, and I was one of those, so I'm sure we'll talk about that. But what does NLE do to support members? We help them to explore options for things that they want to do on their farms and properties. We advocate for key issues that are important. We create networks and relationships and partnerships with people and have a great relationship with Wide Open Ag currently, in our Perth and other NRM groups, and pretty much most people in the room, which is brilliant, so thank you to all our allies, partners. Some of the other things we do is set up a nursery, so we have a nursery in Northern, and I use seeds during there, which we go out and do seed collecting, and then growing those seeds, growing those seedlings and supplying them out to the public and organisations. That's going really, really well. And then I guess the things that we want to talk about tonight or highlight is the bush foods industry. And so what we're doing in that space is we have a honey product, which you can get from Dirty Clean Foods if you want to order your food, like I do also. New honey, which we're successful trademark in some, in fact, on some. The honey is from across the various landholders, and then in the last 2 seasons, 2 years, we have been harvesting wattle seed and testing our wattle seed now for its nutritional value. That. So that's kind of NLE in a nutshell. If we talk about, we want to talk about bush foods because it's become a very sexy space. And there's, I'll put up some articles for people to have a look at, but you know, more than 10 years ago, people were talking about bush foods. You were seeing products out in the market. Probably a lot of people thought that they were like genuine bush food products. Maybe I need to talk about what a genuine bush food product might be, but one might suggest that that would be one that is owned and managed by First Nations people, given that it is our traditional foods. And sadly, this is not the case. Most of the bush food industry is managed and operated without us, which is not so much a surprise for us because we find ourselves in this space regularly. But I think NLE have grabbed the bull by the horns there and said, well, we're going to show that we can be in space, manage our food according to our cultural protocol rights and responsibilities. And so that's some of the stuff that NLE is doing while we do the work that we do. So there's just some examples there of, I'm not sure if I should put examples there, but it's just around packaging and maybe identifies as looking like a First Nations owned product. It might not be, but anyway, there's 2 up there, you can choose which one it might be. And then there's that little business in the middle that talks about tucker and bush tucker. And when we talk about bush tucker, we're not talking just about like wattle seed and honey. We are also talking about fish and kangaroo and emu and everything else that seeds and nuts. It's all of that to us. The bush food industry is growing. They say it's about $20 million a year, about 2% First Nation engagement, and we like to see a really consistent demand that engagement with First Nation people is significantly higher. So I know I've probably gone far too long in talking, so I'm going to throw across the oral to see that his experiences in that space and some of the work that he has done.
Thanks, Heidi. It's good to be here at this forum and a lot of our friends who we've built our relationships with, food, as well as Wide Open Ag, commonly who are a common friend of ours, and a few of us will be over Amsterdam next week, so looking forward to that. But, and I will be speaking over there about the work that we've been doing. I think this slide here really is about the combined efforts of groups like the presenters we've heard. There are many other groups. It's quite a growing industry now. If you were to think about the connection between caring for country, between regenerative ag, natural resource management, conservation councils, groups like Green Australia, and so there's a massive industry, I guess, that collectively, including the carbon industry, that starts to come together under the restoration industry, which is a collection as I see it, as my interpretation. And I think what we participated in, so this is actually one of Will's fantastic previous works that he did at this forum, which was the UN System Sun Food, System Sun Food System Sun, where we presented our stuff, but also with other people, both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, in that forum. And what it is, and what we've heard tonight, is very consistent with what we see as Noongar landowners and traditional owners and custodians of the land. We see that food is obviously a very important issue for us along with the climate and the emergency that we're all moving into as human beings. So caring for country, looking after water, as Marie said, welcome. Our laws, particularly here in Whadjuk Noongar, have been practicing and caring for the lands and the resources and all of those natural assets that are starting to now be quantified and I think valued in a way that contemporary ideas, economics, and science start to realise that the old ways were very scientific, very structured, and actually were very well managed by indigenous peoples, the first peoples, right across the globe. So the innovation and sustainability, the efforts towards sustainability, not only food production, but for the climate issue, climate emergency that we're all going to be confronted with. Many of those solutions in terms of how, particularly how we do whatever it is our aspirations and our requirements are. Many of those solutions lie in both science and practices of First Nations culture, First Nations knowledge. One of the challenges that we have, and certainly here that we've been working really hard over a number of years now, is to start to realise that if we're going to commercialise, we're going to manage, we're going to enter into markets and participate, obviously, develop our own sustainability and business models that are sustainable, then we've got to have a clear understanding of how these two worlds around the legal and commercial aspects impact not only the issues of sacred knowledge we've got there, but the intellectual property is a real tool, I guess, that we as Aboriginal people really got to start to understand, because and all of you have some understanding of the fact that our exploitation of sacred knowledge and knowledge has been far out for 200 years in this, 200 years in this age. So whether it's art, whether it's language, whether it's the land itself, whether it's the way that people have colonised and benefit from this 200 years of colonisation, these things are created a vacuum where we as First Nations people have been left in the social situation that we're all and the history that we've lived. So understanding our rights is a really important part of this. Understanding our rights in both the legal and commercial world, so that we can benefit from the hard work we do, and managing and creating new opportunities, but also protecting our sacred knowledge is a really part of what we're doing. So our model actually talks about having a commercially driven focus, but a very strong cultural recognition and cultural integrity practice. So when we look at honey, we've all contributed to that core, the various causes of honey. We had a significant policy last year, where we collected about a ton and a half of honey policies, about 6 years. So we're entering that and looking at the way that we commercialise, the way we benefit a bit more, but obviously the way we protect our safety knowledge and knowledge around our issues in a growing climate.
Thank you both for that, Heidi and Oral. Now, next up we have Simon Wallwork, who will be talking about the challenges facing farmers and their response to climate change. Simon and his wife Cindy Stevens and 3 children manage a broadacre crop and livestock operation over 3,700 hectares at Corrigin. And the enterprise, now we're just reading this, you might be telling everybody what we're going to say. Yeah. The enterprise includes a mix of 85% crop and 15 livestock, including sheep and cattle. And you have an agricultural science degree, and you also conduct agronomy consultation of farm as well. You've had a long involvement in the Corrigin Farm Improvement Group, and through this hosted many on-farm trials and demonstrations over the years. Now, you teamed up with farmers and industry participants, with many others, to form Ag Zero 2030, which is focused on promoting a positive response by the agricultural industry to climate change. And it's great to have you here, Simon. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so I just want to talk about climate change from a farming point of view and a little bit broader as well from an agriculture industry point of view. So I farm with my family, my wife Cindy and our 3 kids out at Corrigin. All 3 are at boarding school now, which is a change for us, having no kids in the house. Nonetheless, we put a high priority on the education of our kids, so that's why one of the key reasons we farm at Corrigin and try and make it as successful as possible. So yeah, we have crop and we run livestock as well, both sheep and cattle. I'm just taking a bit of a bird's eye view of our industry from a climate change point of view. Back in 2019, we were prompted by our youngest son, Archie, he asked us what we were doing about climate change, about his future. And it got a bit of a discussion going on social media. And as you'd imagine, it's quite a controversial topic in our industry, given the politics, etc. But what it did lead to was an event at UWA, which Oral attended, the minister and a heap of other agriculture people, farmers and professionals, all coming along with the understanding that we didn't want to debate the science anymore. We wanted to be more focused on the solutions. So Ag Zero was formed as a grassroots movement to really promote a positive response to climate change from our industry. I've tried to sum up, through this process of being involved in Ag Zero, we're on a steep learning curve. Across our industry, climate and carbon literacy is pretty basic, whether you're a farmer or a professional. It doesn't matter whether you work for a corporate, it's all pretty low level. We're really trying hard to improve that literacy. But I've tried to sum up all the key issues that we've come across, and we're sort of talking about the challenges, the pressures, the stresses, which are in the red. Obviously, we've got emissions coming in. Agriculture's a part of the problem, but compared to other industries, it's not a big player. There's also pressures coming in from our markets and finance, from banks, insurance companies. I heard recently that insurance companies are now considering some of Australia uninsured due to the risks. So these are all pressures. Consumers are being quite loud and clear about how they want their food produced, and we're hearing about that tonight as well. However, there's a whole range of solutions that we're coming across in terms of the direct solutions of reducing emissions, but also other things such as building climate and carbon literacy so we can make better decisions. Research and development has always been a big thing for agriculture and will continue to be so. Obviously, we need good policy to support all this. There's a massive opportunity here because there is a transformation happening with decarbonisation of our economies to redesign partnerships with Indigenous communities, land restoration and things like that. We don't want to miss this opportunity. Big part of reconciliation, I think. So That's a really important part there. Yeah, there's obviously renewables. We face this issue of scale in farming. How can we build back business opportunities such as solar and wind and things like that? So just coming back to more of a focus of Corrigin, we are farming with a changing climate. I'm sure you're all aware of what's happening in southwest WA with rainfall. We've lost 20% of our growing season rainfall in the last 20 years, and the trend's quite clear. I asked Mark Howden the other day, who presented to a group of us, how can we expect the future to look? And he said, just continue that trend line going forward for at least the next 30 or 40 years. So I started farming in 2003. My whole career will be dealing with the effects of climate change. We did have a good season last year. It was wetter than average, but then we had these horrific fires in February. I've never seen anything like it. 70 km/h winds, 42 degrees, 3% relative humidity. The smoke was like a massive bushfire. Fire was burning sheep manure, and it was rolling across the paddocks, and it destroyed a lot of very old trees, salmon gums, warwick, like hundreds of them. So I'm going to get some sections cut and send them to WA. They're going to do some analysis of the sort of history of the trees and climate change and things like that. So from a farmer's point of view, our number one priority is adapting. We can't go green if we're in the red. So, and our communities need to adapt as well. An example of that is out of Esperance fires, the key recommendation was to have standalone battery power for the mobile phone system. Within the first hour of the Corrigin fire, we lost mobile phone signals because it was powered by the grid. So we really need to step up when it comes to adapting to the new conditions we're dealing with. And we do lots of work on farm to really try and improve the water use efficiency of our farming operation. In terms of agricultural emissions are pretty stable. They're the green line. They tend to be, this is on farm emissions, about 10 to 12% of total emissions. West Australia is the only state with increasing emissions driven by our oil and gas sector. So there's new projects being opened up. Emissions are still increasing. Agriculture is part of the problem. We need to do our bit. We do understand that. So I'll draw back down to the farm level and how, as farmers at Corrigin, how we can respond to the challenges ahead in regards to mitigating climate change. So at the moment, Cindy and I are building a 10-year strategic plan, and our vision is developing, but it's basically about managing risk, climates, markets and banks, and improving the sustainability of our business, the landscape, health and things like that. We're undecided just yet whether we want to be carbon neutral or produce low carbon products. And some of that's based around, we're still trying to understand what the metrics are, what consumers want. The IPCC never actually modelled that agriculture has to be net zero. There is some leeway for food production for some emissions going forward in their predictions of 1.5 to 2 degrees warming. So it's a bit of a misunderstanding that agriculture has to be net zero. So we're trying to build that into our vision. We're looking at carbon projects, both soil and trees. When we're talking about carbon, we want it to be multi-purpose. We want it to look at land degradation, managing salinity, erosion, biodiversity. We also want to graze it when we can, so having mixed species that are grazeable. We obviously want to leave a legacy for our kids, and perhaps a carbon project, for example, could be an asset that you could succeed to your children as a part of succession planning. We also want to focus on soil, plant and animal health. So we thought the first place to start would be to understand our emissions, to benchmark our emissions. So with the help of our farm advisor, we're using a spreadsheet that was developed at the Uni of Melbourne to calculate our on-farm emissions. Been doing that for the last 3 years, and they vary between 1,500 and 2,000 tonnes of CO2 equivalent per annum. just as a comparison, the average Australian household's 15 to 20 tonnes per annum of CO2 equivalent. Our main emissions are from our livestock, methane, and nitrous oxide from fertiliser and lime application and stubble crop residue breaking down. Even though our livestock are only about 20% of our enterprise mix, they make up almost half our emissions. So it is a big challenge, livestock emissions. But once again, we need to have a bit more of a nuanced discussion around livestock emissions, because it's not methane derived from ancient carbon that's released. It's pretty stable and it's cycled back through growing plants and photosynthesis and things like that. So we're trying to work through that. Looking at reducing emissions, what are our main challenges? Obviously spoke about the methane and nitrous oxide. What are the opportunities? There is some innovation and technologies coming through that looks promising, such as Asparagopsis seaweed extract, which can reduce emissions, or shown to reduce emissions by up to 90%. It also put weight on animals, so it's effectively a more efficient animal. So, and this is what we're finding, these can be win-wins. If we're more efficient with our fertiliser application, then we can also reduce our nitrous oxide emissions. So they don't have to necessarily be mutually exclusive. We're mainly focused on on-farm emissions, but we're also having discussions with fertiliser companies, for example, about how they can supply products that are produced with renewable energy rather than fossil fuels. So how do we include the whole supply chain in decarbonisation of our products? The other side of the equation is the offsets, carbon offsets. So if our total emissions are around 2,000 tonnes per annum, we've worked out we need to plant about 8% of the property, 288 hectares to offset all our emissions. Now for us, that would be a transition to getting to carbon neutral, for example. And then over time, as we reduce emissions with new technologies and practices, then effectively we could be carbon positive. And then that's an asset that we could sell on the market, perhaps. That's assuming we don't sell those carbon credits. That's assuming that we fund our own carbon projects. And so at $1,000 a hectare, it's a significant investment, $288,000. If we did sell them, say to a gas company, that to us is an ethical challenge. We're pretty keen on the fossil fuel industry to transition as quick as possible to renewables, because the emissions are directly affecting our climate, which affects us as farmers. So that's something we're working through as well. I spoke about multi-purpose tree planting. This is an example on the farm where we've got some saline areas coming up. Cindy's really skilled in different native species and selecting them and best placing them in the landscape to offer all of those benefits. And there's emerging markets with biodiversity and things like that as well. So we might be able to value add. If our carbon credit's $20 a tonne, for example, we might add $2 or $3 with the biodiversity co-payment as well. So there's also things, frameworks emerging where you might be able to stack carbon from trees with soil carbon. So it's a rapidly changing space. It's not something you want to jump in and rush into from our perspective, because if things are changing so quick, you want to be sure that we're going down the right path, because you're committing yourself for at least 25 years. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Thanks.
So now we'll be opening things up for a panel discussion. So we will have some prepared questions to kick things off, and then we'll open it up to the floor. So we'll have the questions ready. Our CCWA staff will have walking around with the microphones with this one. Yeah. Okay. And so if you have a question for one of the panelists or a general question for all the panelists, just please get Steph's attention to this. Now, please, I'd like to invite our speakers, Merilyn, Shay, Heidi, and Simon. I'd like to take their seats. And while we're coming up, I'd like to welcome another speaker to join us for the panel discussion. So we have tonight with us Professor Rajeev Varshney, an agricultural research scientist specializing in genomics and molecular breeding with 20+ years of service in developing countries in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. Dr. Varshney works in Murdoch University as a director for the Centre for Crop and Food Innovation, which looks to help Australian farmers be competitive in the world marketplace by undertaking research in crop genomics, bioinformatics, genetics, molecular biology and physiology, soil and water management, new agricultural technologies, and the developing area of food technologies. Rajeev is also director for the State Agricultural Biotechnology Centre and international chair in agriculture and food security with the Food Futures Institute, and has many other numerous accomplishments. There are far too many to list tonight, but we're very thankful to have Rajeev on our panel to share his knowledge with us. Thank you so much. So please welcome Rajeev. It's great to have you all here. It's a very nuanced topic. We've had some wonderful things from you all. There's something that we're really passionate about at CCWA is biodiversity and conservation. And with International Day for Biodiversity coming up, it would be great to hear from each of you on the role farmers and the food industry can play in protecting the precious biodiversity of our state. Maybe we can start with Simon.
Yeah, thank you. I guess just firstly, how do we define biodiversity? What does it mean? I guess it's the vegetation, it's also soil biology, the animals in our landscape as well. So as a broadacre farmer, I understand we're mainly monocultures, but yeah, also we're responsible for managing a fair proportion of remnant vegetation, also green vegetable areas. So it is something on our radar. And I must admit that I was involved in the enterprise work for 4 years. Being involved in that group really changed the way I look at the landscape. I was very much focused on crops at that point, but spent time with Sorrel, others in the group. That, yeah, I find myself looking at our landscape and maybe vegetation a lot more than aware that we need to be a part of that, doing that. So I think particularly if there's some sort of way of recouping costs and doing that, it's going to certainly provide a lot of
Rajeev, do you have some comments on biodiversity?
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. And I'm very excited to be here. As I'm from Murdoch University, so on behalf of Murdoch University, also we would like to welcome you all. I hope you are having a good time. So now, in terms of biodiversity from the scientific perspective, I think we can have the biodiversity two different major classes. One, at the crop level or the species level in agriculture. So for instance, Simon, you really gave very nice presentation at your crop. And when I was visiting the wheat belt in Western Australia, one thing is that if you see and then majority of the time you are having wheat or barley. So now the question is even from the perspective of environmental sustainability, when we are talking about Sunday, we will have this biodiversity day and we are talking about environmental sustainability. So this is not really good that we keep on doing wheat and barley again and again. So we need to have the diversification of the cropping system. And in that part, many scientific communities are talking and you believe very important crop, but we need to bring more pulses of, for instance, chickpea and lentil, pea, etc. So I think that we need to do this. So this is point number one, that how we can add more crops, we can have the diversification of the system. Second, that this breeding or this, well, basically all over the world, and Australia has done a great job, that we are having high yielding varieties. And even in the wheat belt where we have a rainfall about less than around 300 millimeter, then also we are able to produce good wheat and barley and last year was wheat. But now what happened during the 100 years or so, we continue to develop the new varieties and we have lost land races, the varieties which were grown by the farmers, the natural farmers. So I think those genes which have been lost during the process of domestication and breeding, now through the scientific practices, genomics, etc., it is possible now to bring those genes and alleles from the land races back to the variety. So I think this is another important area that we need to work with. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
So, for me, biodiversity is the manifestation of the spirit. It's the manifestation of the spirituality of the land itself. Because, from my example, I showed you, you understand, wheat crop somewhere in the middle of the wheat belt, maybe on Simon's Bar, lazy is a good one. And then you go and stand, a natural stand in the bush or the forest, or you go and stand on the ocean, or somewhere where biodiversity of that particular piece of land is strong and well established. It's a completely different experience sense. So biodiversity is critically important. Biodiversity is a natural, long-standing ecological system. It's not introduced species, it's not genetically modified. And too much of our land, too much of our biodiversity has been completely wiped out. So the work that we have to do as humans, not just as from a Noongar lens or Noongar perspective, but the work that we must do as humans is restore as much as we can possibly do. Now, I don't know what that is, because if you ask me, on our property, we committed 20 million trees on 2,100 acres. So we have returned 150 years of damaged weed sheep farming piece of land back to a very strong biodiversity, which ecologically strong, ecologically system strong piece of land. So when we start to look at carbon, we start to look at the natural capital accounting, these new systems that are coming in to allow us to measure, I guess, the value of not just what we've done, but the value of the land here. We believe that we've doubled the price of real estate. So biodiversity is important. For Noongar, it's to save us 2,000 generations. Now, the food, the biodiversity, the systems, the ecology, and of course the very, very dry climate that we've had for a long time, and that we're going to get, it's going to get worse as we heard Simon said, is so important in understanding the importance of the natural systems, because our native plants can survive the dry climate that's coming. So return to native grains, return to understanding bush foods, and understanding some of those species that sustain us. And then, hybridising, I guess, our farming practices and our farming science systems to integrate that with some of the introduced grains and species of animals as well is a new way of pursuing us. So we must return a significant amount of biodiversity back if we're going to survive. That's just not negotiable. And then what we do, calculate and determine what is economic viable must come a very strong set for food. Unless we can do that as humans, then we're really not kidding ourselves, because the emergency, the climate situation that is not related is going to be felt really, really strongly here in Western Australia and Australia.
I think you're really knowing from like we're obviously a biodiversity hotspot and it's declining. I just think it was like an analogy back to students and I can't go about my life by myself. I need all these connections with all different people. And I think our biodiversity does the same. So we need to stop taking biodiversity group, adding back into a growing resilience. And I think that I think a lot of that analogy to take home.
Yeah, I think we have a role in facilitating some of those communications and networks and bringing people together because that's the way we can make a difference. Everyone's coming with their point of view and we're all kind of working in the same direction, but how we catch that wave and get some change happening.
Right. Thank you all for those comments. Do we have any questions yet from everybody? Oh, we have a couple at the back there. If you'd like to make your way up there. Thank you for those. It's interesting the perspectives for all of you there.
Yes, hello, and thank you very much for introducing. Just a bit concerned with that I haven't heard the words organics or biodynamics from anybody, particularly from Simon, when biodynamics has been used extensively to help organic farming as well as smaller farms. So are those two things not included in what you're working on now?
Not in our farming system, no. We what you call mainstream farmers and very much take I suppose a scientific approach to making fair biodynamic organic farming systems. We are involved in a cohort that exports most of our grain overseas, and we try and produce as much as we can, as efficiently as we can, in pretty large areas and large equipment. So we're not really targeting niche markets. If we did make a shift to that sort of farming system, we'd have to be really mindful financially whether our business would cope with that transition, because we'd have to go through a bit of downtime financially to get there, and at the moment it's just not an option for us. But it's certainly, we're hoping, and there's business science there, that technology will solve some of the issues that we're facing around chemicals and things like that. So yeah, but I think there's a role for both.
I've got probably a comment on that. So we work with farmers who turn to generative, so it tends to be less prescriptive than organic and biodynamic. There are a suite of different tools that farmers can use, and they're the experts on the land. So they choose things that work for them in their system within sort of a range of different activities they can do on farm. And we found that from the point of view of giving farmers the opportunity to do the best with their particular land, that's a better outcome for us. And also we found organic, some of those things have become very critical and quite just restrictive in what they can do and what's manageable within the system. And what tends to happen is people will see a set of rules and then try and find a way to work around it. That's just human nature to a degree. Whereas if it is more outcomes-based and much less prescribed, then that hopefully will give people the room to grow and to share their experiences and to work towards an outcome at scale.
Thank you. Another question?
Say credit to you all for your involvement and so passionate about the future of climate and still being and trying to keep sustainable. My question is just in a broad effect, broad sort of sense, away from the grain and growing, about an industry being avocado growing. Very close friends down in the Penrith region have witnessed huge amounts of beautiful carry being demolished for rich avocado farmers. And yet, recently I think on the ABC, there was a farm further up towards here that was dumping avocados. I want to ask that with farmers and agricultural bodies, how close are they to agricultural departments? Where is there some form of ruling? You know, we're going to like this weekend, biodiversity. Well, that's a real, that whole carry section going is rich in biodiversity. How can this be going on that farmers, some huge big avocado growers, are demolishing carry, and then another farmer's burying them? It's not, I'm not aiming at you because it's out of your sort of growers, but yeah, in this biodiversity day, weekend, yeah, one begs to differ on how does this work? But yeah, I don't know if you can answer that. Is my question is how well do government bodies really look at this?
Yeah, so it's really questions about how much is this, the whole landscape around who does what where and how that affects.
Yeah.
Would anybody like to take that on? Is there something you'd like to know? Would you know anything about that at all? Shay?
I feel like it's sort of hard for anyone to really comment on it. Each person has their own CCWA that they're trying to do. Obviously, we don't want to see it very happening, and it's probably the supply and demand out there, and I think that's probably part of the reasoning. Obviously, we don't want to see it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like.
Would you like to add anything strong or?
I think it's a pretty tight regulations around here, you know, so I'm not aware exactly what they are, but we've got some tight regulations around fire and the branch, I'll get calls, so yeah.
I think there's a government person down there, an ex-politician, who's actually got some, his own rules down there.
All right, well, we'll leave that on there.
Yeah.
We can talk about it in the forum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Going to be enough voice. Anyway, look, there are regulations around clearing. I used to work with the rural real estate team. I don't know how that happened. You never should be carried for us, but and you pull the thread on it. I've been out of that sector 4 years now, but just Googling, but yeah, definitely severe fines and imprisonment. So it's not an area that's not regulated. Anyway, I have a question to Simon. Hi, Simon. Are you looking at sandalwood at all as one of your agroforestry options?
No.
Hey.
I was only understand all the time ago, so and we did a national project, so MIP and stuff, technology and like that. So yeah, I just don't know how to explain it, but I don't think it's my place to go there. I think there can be models developed in partnership going forward, but we need to do a lot of work around this stuff. There's been too much exploitation, so we really need to think strategically, and that's what I try to make that kind of opportunity now how it looks. So it's not gushing, it's having these sorts of conversations with Simon how we go forward.
Thank you, Simon. And I just want to say, hats off to you for coming on tonight. It takes a lot of courage as a producer to put yourself out there and showcase the conversation.
Really good question. Oh, would you like to say something about salary? Is there anything you'd like to add?
Firstly, I'm not a farmer, but we, secondly, we do have a sample plantation on that problem. 40 years old. The sandal was, the native sandal species is a part of this biodiversity, but the way it's commercialised, it's very much monoculture. So, we know the sandal industry is very fun because supply of sandal. So, in a market sense, I don't think I'm not sure how to go in the natural biodiversity and cultural context. We need those trees back in nature. We need them back growing as wild trees, not on small plots on someone's property. So I think that it stays consistent with what we're saying. The biodiversity importance, the sandal species themselves is a critical part of that biodiversity, and we should be doing planting. It's not only of sandal, but a lot of these native trees that have been damaged. Science spoke about sand down to which are magnificent trees probably that should be restored because of and regenerated because of the fire, which is obviously unforeseen. As the trees of the river are so critical to the health of the whole city, not just of the plant and the ecological systems of the plants, but the soil and the water are all critical to these. In our cultural ways, these trees are iconic times. Our culture identifies that we, as human people, are part of that biodiversity because we're part of that system that was created for us to sustain the health of Whadjuk, as we call it. Whadjuk is not just that, it's the environment, it's the universe, it's the whole system of life. So sandal is important in right context.
Thank you. You have another question?
Hi, Bruce Simons is my name. I take school history. I've got a question for all of you. I'm going to talk around the context of it. The question is, let's assume we're meeting here in 100 years' time. What will Ringville look like? So the background of this is my grandfather was a Scotsman who came to Australia in the early 90s, started farming coconut. He bought a 4,300 acre farm. There was 30 acres of it cleared, and he spent most of his lifetime clearing it. Now, by the early 1920s, he was recording in his diaries that there was plenty of farm that stopped there already because the one that's a major problem. Over the period of his lifetime, he basically undid the ecosystem that was in that land and been there for a long time. So I think if we've been able to say to him, look, what was his name? Don't really spit, put it like that. I think we'd be really pleased not to do it. So I'm trying to ask you, that's following money in our way. If we can go 400 years, what's it going to look like? And how would you like to see the Ringville?
Great question, thank you. Who would like to have that one first? Would you like to, Liz?
So in an ideal world, we would do all we want to do. I guess, yeah, and we would have an enthusiastic group of young farmers who are working the land and working with the energy population, as well as with each other to build a system that gives us good food security here, but also gives employment and industry for Western Australia and our future together. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's very difficult to do. But there is a lot of research on desalination of wind and different things. If you do technology will help us. It's also a big part of the problem, but it's also a big part of the solution. And we get to the other parts as well, I think, and different. So yeah, there's lots of this time.
Who else has a vision for the future, 100 years from now, what the landscape will be like?
I think it will be contemporary. I don't think we can turn that off now, unfortunately. But there'll be opportunities. Mark Allen talks about we might be farming food, energy, water, lots of things. So there could be solar panels, solar farms, windmills, lots of diverse species for food. I think animals still have an important role to play. So yeah, but we need to revegetate a fair bit more land because some of them is still getting worse. Yeah, but the world population is still increasing, and food's price of food will continue to increase as well. So it's going to be that balancing act with producing enough for the world's population, as we're seeing at the moment, what's happening in the Black Sea region, versus supplying higher value vegetable markets and things like that.
Not necessarily pushing, but I feel like what we are is sort of farming and I suppose that farmers are really pushing it regularly and thinking outside the box, and that's really good encourage now. Obviously, we want to see more people in the regions and the communities and having one of those sort of businesses that are doing potentially, but also having sort of different innovative ideas to do climate change.
Thank you very much. So I think what we are discussing is very good, and yeah. So ideally, we would like to see environmental sustainable agriculture, lot of biodiversity, and young generation engaged in the farming system. However, the other side, which is related to this area, we need to be prepared for that as well. So on one hand, the whole world we are talking about between 9.6 or 10 million people. But as advances are happening, this doesn't mean that I'm supportive of that, but I'm just putting this here. Maybe 50 years later, 100 years later, we may not eat the food what we are having now. Maybe we have to have the food in the form of the cash, for instance. We are talking nowadays still have to eat. So even that we don't need to grow the livestock in the farms and even produce the meat, the labs. I mean, those things are also moving ahead, I think. So I'm not saying that this is a good habit, but then there are different ways, and so sometimes we will take on that direction, so we do not want to do it.
That really is a vision.
But they say, well, I'm supportive of that.
I think science is telling us now probably about 60 parts away that we are farming. So 60 years is the time frame for we're activity more like science is also telling us. So to be optimistic, I would very much like to see very much a hybridized sort of version of what we're doing where we've got to address the true rate. Desertification is encroaching in the use of window as it's already, it's not track, it's not down track. And so 100 years, we will not see this if we're not careful. This is a big push. And so how we create our systems for our own sustainability around food production, food systems is actually up to us. We must look almost immediately. And action is required now. So I agree with Simon. I think that the way the old world and this new world are really, it's critical to find something. But we can restore that. We can restore that. We can regenerate it and the soil if we can get to it. How much of it we do is actually up to us. So do we need to produce millions of tons to feed the whole world, or should we focus on downsizing the size of the farms and reintroducing humans back to what we've got? We also know that in the 60s there were thousands of farmers managing farms, So now, literally, 200, 300, 400. So, you know, communities are important also.
Well, thank you everyone for your great questions. I'm sorry we've run out of time. I know there's some more questions here. Maybe take them up with some of the presenters in the foyer afterwards. But thank you to our presenters for taking the time to show us your wonderful ideas and work that you're doing and for putting yourself in front of everyone tonight. And we're so grateful to Wallwork Agriculture for their support on this event. So that's a big thanks to Ben and Richard and the team for all this support. And there's also,
yeah, please take the oatmeal with you. If there's some in the foyer, feel free to take some home and try it, chew it, eat it, drink it, whatever.
oatmeal, free oatmeal in the foyer.
And there's also some discount vouchers. There's also some discount vouchers you want to put along with the food. So yeah, and then it's got those in the foyer as well.
So please join us.